west of Sherbrooke. Thank you.
For centuries, our ancestors dreamed at the prospect of human flight. Watching the birds soar through the sky above, philosophers from all over the world studied the wing motions and feathers of the world's natural aviators. Remarkably, archaeologists have traced birds as far back as 150 million years ago. Contrast this with the fact that the first human flight was only achieved in 1783, one might start to feel a little humble. Jubilantly, though, the triumph was made in a hot air balloon. Various inventions helped pave the way, and the first form of man-made aircraft was the kite. China has records of kites dating back to the 6th century AD. 3 centuries later, the first kind of hang glider was demonstrated by Abbas ibn Firnas in Andalusia in the 9th century AD. Then, in the 16th century, Leonardo da Vinci gathered data on the flight of birds and was the first to make scientific proposals. His most important developments to aviation were the air screw or propeller, the parachute, and a helicopter designed to rise by the revolving of a rotor on a vertical axis. Unfortunately, he never constructed them. Finally, the Montgolfier brothers, who were wealthy paper mill and luxury wallpaper manufacturers, built a larger paper-lined silk balloon and demonstrated it on June the 4th, 1783, in the marketplace at Annonay. With great amazement, their balloon, called a Montgolfier, which is French for hot air balloon, rose spectacularly into the air and remained aloft for 10 minutes. Subsequently, on September the 19th of 1783, in Versailles, France, a Montgolfier hot air balloon carrying a sheep, a rooster, and a duck flew for 8 minutes in front of Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette, and the French court. Ultimately, on November the 21st, 1783, Jean-François Pilâtre de Rosier and François Laurent d'Alonde became the world's first aeronauts, and the Montgolfier brothers created the birth of hot air ballooning. Concurrently, the Montgolfier brothers believed they had discovered a new gas because they burnt wool and straw. They named it Montgolfier gas. In fact, the gas was mere air, which became more buoyant as it was heated. Flying the first balloon required constant stoking of a brazier to maintain an adequate flow of heated air into the huge bag of linen paper. It is said that as the flight over Paris progressed, the Marquis paused in his stoking to admire the River Seine beneath them, at which point his colleague complained, "If you look at the river in that fashion, you will be likely to bathe in it soon. Some fire, my dear friend, some fire." The euphoria fueled people's imaginations and created a desire for courageous balloonists to embark on a journey of record-making and record-breaking. This remarkable passion continues to this day. In 1785, a French balloonist, Jean-Pierre Blanchard, and his American co-pilot, John Jeffries, became the first to fly across the English Channel. In these early days of ballooning, the English Channel was considered the first step to long-distance ballooning and set a large benchmark in ballooning history. The next leap was in 1960. Captain Joe Kittinger not only set a new altitude record of 102,000 feet, he also parachute jumped from a helium balloon, breaking not only the high-altitude parachute jump record, but he even broke the sound barrier with his body. Not content with 2 world records, in 1984, Captain Joe Kittinger flew 3,535 miles on the first solo transatlantic balloon flight, setting yet another record. Remarkably, Bertrand Piccard and Brian Jones in 1999 captured what was possibly the holy grail for the fearless balloonists, the around-the-world flight record. Leaving from Switzerland and landing in Africa, they smashed all previous distance records, flying for 19 days, 21 hours and 55 minutes. Most recently, in 2005, Vijay Pat Singhania, an Indian businessman, claimed a new world record for the highest flight in a hot air balloon, reaching approximately 70,000 feet. The voyage lasted several hours, and the balloon, remarkably, was as tall as a 22-story building. Let's take a look at the hot air balloon manufacturing process to see how hot air balloons are made. They don't just manufacture them, it's as if they give birth to them. The whole workforce takes great pride in every aspect of the balloon. Like a child, they nurture them and even teach them to fly. It's in their soul, and it shows. The design of the balloon can be tailored to the customer's wishes. Literally, the sky's the limit. They have produced thousands of designs, from dinosaurs to strawberries. And it doesn't stop there. The fabric comes in more colors than the rainbow. So let's start with the fabric. Fortunately, ripstop nylon, the fabric from which hot air balloons are built, will not sustain a flame. As the name suggests, the material is specially woven with criss-cross reinforcement threads to help prevent tearing. The material is very light and colourful. The fabric can withstand temperatures in excess of 120 degrees centigrade. Did you know the driving suits of Formula One drivers are made of Nomex? This fabric will not sustain a flame and is used to make the throat and skirt of a hot air balloon. The nylon is cut into panels, which are sewn into long strips of fabric called gauze. Each panel edge is folded back on itself, interleaved with the next folded edge, and then all 4 thicknesses of fabric are sewn through twice by machine using a lock stitch. The gauze are attached to heavy-duty nylon tapes that pass around the balloon. It's these tapes, rather than the ripstop nylon panels, that carry the load suspended beneath the airbag. Okay, you have the fabric and the colour. Now how do you get the amazing patterns? This state-of-the-art machine, programmed by an expert operator, cuts the design with amazing precision. Prior to this, all the patterns and lettering were painstakingly completed by hand. The machine seems to have a mind of its own, and its laser-guided blade cuts so fast it's hard to keep up with. It's time to leave the modern technology and step back in time. Let's take a look at the handcrafted baskets, or gondolas. Specially selected wicker is used to make the basket. This is then interwoven with the stainless steel frame. The rope handles are stitched in place, and the craftsmen hand-stitch the padded leather or suede into the most intricate parts of the basket, making sure the passengers have a soft landing. The baskets come in all shapes and sizes and can cater for 1 to 32 people. You really are spoilt for choice. The burner assembly is checked and bolted together. All the rigging wires, fuel lines, burner supports and burners are attached to the burner assembly. And finally, the burners are fired up and refined for optimum performance. Quality control is a major factor. Every stage of the manufacturing process is checked by hand. Just like a car, this is where the hot air balloon gets a full MOT. Eventually, when quality control staff are happy with the product, the completed hot air balloon goes on a test flight, is brought back to the factory and given a full clean. Finally, it is given its unique ID registration, which is issued by the Civil Aviation Authority. Then it's packed away for delivery to its proud owner. Fortunately, you don't have to buy a hot air balloon to experience the magical flight. Commercial hot air ballooning companies operate worldwide. And here is the operations manager for one such company.
Hello, my name's Arthur Street and I'm the operations manager for Aerosaurus Balloons. Aerosaurus Balloons are a public transport operation and we provide hot air balloon flights for passengers across the West Country, spread from an area from Bodmin in Cornwall to the west as far as Salisbury in the east. Aerosaurus Balloons is one of approximately 60 hot air balloon companies licensed and regulated by the Civil Aviation Authority in this country. And of those 60 companies, approximately half of those would be full-time 7-day-a-week operations. Some of them would perhaps be a single private operator who operating the entire business on their own, in effect, maybe with a wife as assistants. Some of them would be larger companies with perhaps a team of employed pilots and crew and office and administration. But since the industry started actually operating in '89, we've trained many hundreds of pilots in this country who have then gone on to take their expertise abroad. A leisure industry has been established in its own right throughout the world now for hot air balloon flights in Africa, in North Africa, in Egypt, in Europe itself, in the Far East, and there's probably hardly a country in the world now that doesn't have the ability to provide hot air balloon recreation for holiday makers and locals, and the majority of that will have been based upon, in some part or in some cases in full, on the British system that was, as I say, commenced in 1989.
It's a beautiful morning. The sun starts to rise in the sky and the wind is minimal. You arrive at the rendezvous. Your emotions are high and nervously you stroll towards a trailer that holds your transport for the next hour or so. The crew greet you with a warm smile and you start to feel a little calmer.
It's a lifelong ambition. My friend and I are celebrating our 60th birthdays this year, and so we thought, right, we're going to go for it. And so that's why we're here. I'm really looking forward to it. I think we're going to feel as though we're in another world and as though we're just drifting aimlessly along, and I think it's going to be marvellous.
I've always thought that it would be
total freedom up there. That's the only way I can describe it.
I mean, you see it on the television and that, you don't imagine it, how big they are when they're on the ground.
I've got no idea. I guess just floating along a little bit.
Quiet, noisy.
No, I think it'll be noisy because of the little, like, whooshy cylinder things. But then quiet, I suppose, when they're not on. So a mixture of both.
You're not nervous, scared.
No, I'm in capable hands.
A member of the crew starts to explain the process of constructing the hot air balloon.
Once I light the burners up, that's your indication.
The pilot briefs you and the other passengers about flight number R127 and then releases a small weather balloon. Suddenly, all of the noise and excitement begins. Passengers start to chat and help with the construction of the hot air balloon. You gaze at the equipment consisting of the fan, the fuel tanks, navigational equipment, and the basket and the balloon material itself. While the pilot carries out all the necessary checks on the basket and burner, the crew pull the balloon fabric out of the bag and arrange it, ready for inflation. Passengers gaze with amazement at the size of the balloon. If it were cut in the middle and opened out, there would be enough fabric to cover a football pitch. Now it's time to fill the balloon with cold air, using an enormous fan. The final stage before takeoff. The crew hold the crown line good and steady during this phase. You and your fellow passengers climb into the basket. The pilot puts plenty of heat into the balloon, and away you go. The blast from the burner powers the balloon upwards. It's as if we are stood still as the world slowly passes beneath us. It's incredible. Gradually, the retrieve crew pack up the ground equipment and head off in hot pursuit of the balloon. Whilst above the clouds, the majority of passengers ask the pilot questions regarding hot air ballooning. So let's get started. Can you steer a balloon? The pilots can't actually steer a balloon, but they can orientate it. And some experienced pilots are able to take a flight in one direction, then rise to a different altitude to catch wind in the returning direction. balloonists are regularly on the watch for very slight indicators of air movement. This can be in the form of flags, leaves, and smoke. These are all clear wind gauges, and during very hot weather, pilots can estimate surface wind direction by watching cows on the ground. They usually stand facing into any slight breeze. Why don't you see hot air balloons on a rainy day? Hot air balloons don't fly in the rain because it decreases visibility, and the heat from the burner can cause water to boil. This damages the balloon material. Why do the pilots wear gloves? The propane used to fire the burner has a boiling temperature of minus 44 degrees Fahrenheit. It's also used as a refrigerant. So pilots wear protective leather or Nomex gloves when handling the fuel system. Even a slight exposure to the gas can result in severe freeze burns. How do you get a hot air balloon pilot's license? Well, this is governed by the Civil Aviation Authority and requires a minimum flying experience of 16 hours within 24 months and a minimum of 4 flights with a British Balloon and Airship Club approved instructor. The rest may be with any pilot holding a valid balloon license. You have to keep a flight log with flight training records completed by the instructing pilot. Also, you have to keep a British Balloon and Airship Club training log. This is a requirement of the BBAC, not the Civil Aviation Authority. Then you must be recommended by a BBAC approved instructor for a flight test. Then undertake a flight test examination with a Civil Aviation Authority approved examiner. The flight test consists of a solo flight under the supervision of the examiner or an instructor delegated by the examiner. you have to take written examinations in aviation law, navigation, meteorology, balloon systems, and human performance. You must have a medical declaration of fitness signed by your GP, and some GPs will require an examination, and attend an approved landowner relations seminar. Then complete the written examinations and flight test within a 24-month period. Now some technical words for hot air ballooning enthusiasts. Aerostat. A lighter than air craft. A hot air balloon is an aerostat. Aerostation. The science of lighter than air flight. Crown. The top of the balloon envelope. Crown line. A rope which at one end is fastened to the top or crown of the balloon, and at the other end is used by a member of the crew to help stabilize the balloon during inflation and deflation. Crown ring. The ring of metal at the top of the envelope or crown. This is where all the loaded tapes are attached to. Splash and dash. This is when a hot air balloon flies over a lake or stream. The pilot lowers the balloon so that the basket splashes onto the water. Great skill is needed to do this stunt. Along with the champagne, a popular toast among balloonists is soft winds and gentle landings. Why champagne? Well, there is a long-standing tradition in ballooning that during or after the flight, the passengers and crew have a toast of champagne. There is actually a reason behind this that dates back to the 1780s when the first balloon flights were staged. On one of the first successfully manned balloon flights, the pilots carried along a bottle of champagne to enjoy on the flight, but instead of actually drinking it, they had to use it as an offer of goodwill to the farmers whose field their balloon had landed in. The champagne convinced the farmers that they were not in fact demons, and acted as an apology for disturbing the land and animals grazing in the field. The tradition still stands to this day. Not all hot air balloons are commercially owned. Some are privately owned and used for sporting or leisure purposes. Some people become members of a club who own a hot air balloon. Other people go for their pilot's license and then get corporate sponsoring, hence the balloons with well-known company names and logos. Ballooning events take place all over the world. The most popular size of balloon is described as a 77. That's because the envelope holds 77,000 cubic feet of air. The 77 can often carry 4 people, depending on their weight. And this makes it ideal for family, club, or syndicate use. Just imagine being with family or friends, sitting, having a picnic. Time to relax and forget about the modern-day stress and technology. Indulge in the views of these magnificent balloons. Watch as the whole spectrum of colours slowly inflate. You observe with wonder and awe. The whole experience reminds you of days gone by. The inner child starts to unfurl inside. The whirring of giant fans. The polished burners roar. As the pilots test them, crews are rushing around organising the ropes, guides, ancillaries, and opening up the envelope ready to be inflated. The pilots focus on all the safety checks whilst talking to the crew. All are surrounded by a kaleidoscope of colours that lay on the grass, just waiting for the fans to breathe life into them. As the cold air gets blasted into the balloon, the huge fabric looks like ripples in the sea. Then the fierce burner starts to blast the heated air inside. You try to listen to the megaphone, which echoes in the distance, and notice the crowds all around. The crowd cheer as suddenly a balloon takes to the sky. Then 2, 3, and all of a sudden you feel a rush of excitement. Once all the frantic action stops, these giant Goliaths float aloft and suddenly change into objects of sheer beauty. It takes thousands of cubic feet of hot air to launch these balloons gracefully into the air. You watch as they all float away into the distance. You watch them disappear into the horizon. In your imagination, you try to guess where will they land. Are you still wondering how Flight R127 landed? Well, the pilot starts to look for a suitable landing field. Soon we approach an ideal spot with plenty of space for the balloon's descent. We drift slowly over a field at treetop height. We all grab hold of rope handles to brace ourselves. With a cheer, we land on the grass. Our journey has ended, but the adventure has not. We'd been aloft for slightly over an hour. Having spoken to the farmer and been granted permission to enter the field, our ground crew arrived within a few minutes, and they, along with a number of volunteers, help to fold and roll up the balloon so that it fits tightly into its bag. The ground crew start to pack away the basket and equipment. Then the balloon and basket are lifted onto a trailer. The pilot presents all the passengers with a complimentary flight certificate, and you take leave with your newfound friends.
Just keep the pressure on. And then a lot of idiots like that.
You stop to ponder at the wonderful experience you just encountered. What a glorious day.
Definitely. I'd go again now.
Yes.
We didn't want to come down, did we,
No,
Elaine?
I'm sure I'll be doing it again sometime.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
It was just what I expected, or what I'd hoped it would be. Drifting above everything, and yes, just very peaceful, and yes, it was lovely.
Just felt
Absolutely
totally weightless, and you didn't feel the balloon rising. It was just all seamless. It was absolutely fantastic.
You suddenly realised that you were a lot higher up than you'd first seen. First of all, you saw the treetops, and then the next time you looked down, they were sort of in miniature. So So
So you recommend it?
Oh, definitely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
If you haven't done this, you haven't lived.
Hot air balloonists have great fun preparing for the night glow, and the results are spectacular. As the night takes hold, the flames are diminished, and you have memories you want to hold tight. The balloons are put away ready for the next day, whilst the balloonist thoughts are on their next adventure, somewhere above the clouds.